Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Imperfect Marketing. I'm your host, Kendra Corman. And today, my guest is Colin Sandberg. He is a multi business owner and founder of FinElevate. This MBA led strategic finance firm helps business owners use their numbers to make money rather than simply better categorizing their expenses. As CEO and owner of manufacturing, distribution, and service businesses, he developed a passion for demystifying small business finance and supporting fellow entrepreneurs in achieving their dreams. Welcome, Colin. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Kendra. I appreciate it.
So, just for my listeners, if you're listening or watching, wherever you're listening or watching, you're probably like, Kendra, this is marketing. Why are we talking finance? Because you can't grow your business and you will be out of business if you can't manage your cash flows. As solopreneurs, as entrepreneurs, as coaches, consultants, whatever it is that you happen to be, if you cannot manage your cash flows, then you can't manage your business and you'll be out of business. And all of the marketing in the world isn't going to help that, unfortunately. And as most of you know, we only get paid when we're doing work. And so some of us will have busier times and some of us will have slower times. We're recording this in April after tax season winds up. So again, all of those accounting firms just got through their busiest season where they got like 90% of their income.
Yep.
So again, managing finances, really, really important. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about small business finance. What's one of the biggest mistakes that you see people making when it comes to their small business?
Yeah, I think you said it. The biggest mistake that I see is that people kind of have the wrong attitude toward their business finances. A lot of owners, you start a business, maybe you're a solopreneur. It's really like I either have money in the bank or I don't. And you kind of run your business that way. And what's where it gets scary is I see people, scale big 6-figure, even small 7-figure businesses, and they still have that mentality. And so, as you would imagine, that means no one on their team is competent about the financial side of the business because the owner's not, and maybe it's not their comfort zone or something they like to focus on. And that kind of mindset does not scale. It's not something you can delegate. It's not something that works, beyond the startup phase.
So I think one of the biggest issues that I come across with people in business and in small businesses is figuring out, what do they charge?
Yeah.
What kind of advice do you offer to people on pricing?
Well, first off, a blanket statement. There is no small business that should not have premium pricing. And so what I always tell people is if you don't see the path for you having premium pricing, now we need to get back to the product side and evaluate there. Because the reality is you can't service, you cannot have Amazon's business model, Walmart's business model, where you're going to make it up in volume. That's not realistic in your small business. And so if you're not charging some form of a premium, if the way you're delivering your product or service isn't justifying a premium, then we have to get back to the core of that. Because the reality is you cannot win this game trying to be the cheapest and the friendliest with the best service, and the easiest to work with. You can't be all those things. And unfortunately, what I see is people start, they lead with that cheap price because they feel like, oh, it's easier to sell. Of course it's easier to sell, but it's a short-term trade. And then you turn back to your business and you start cutting corners everywhere you look. So you're trying to cut corners with what you can pay your employees, with the cost of materials in your product. And you turn around and you're just cutting corners at every level to try and make up for the fact that you sold it at too low of a price.
So one of the things that was interesting is that you said there that a lot of people go with the cheap pricing. Okay. And just so you guys know, the reason that I'm able to talk about this stuff so easily is because I have made all of these mistakes and came from this perspective at one point or another in running my
Same here.
business.
Same here, 100%. I've made every dumb mistake I could possibly make. And so
A lot of the times when I'm interviewing people, I'm looking at my question list. I'm not looking at my question list. I'm not even considering my question list. I'm like,
yeah.
I know all of the mistakes that I've made, and I feel like this is really important. And even though it's a little bit outside the realm of marketing, which I don't think it is because pricing falls under marketing.
Of course.
And again, profitability falls under the fact that you exist, which fuels marketing. But one of the things that you said there was that lower pricing often is a lot easier to sell. I started with that mentality too, because again, like most people, we all make the same mistakes, right? The problem is, I don't think it is. I think I lost business because people were like, that's too cheap. What's the catch? What have you seen anything like that? Or are you finding people are getting volume at the lower pricing and then not able to hire people because they didn't price it appropriately?
No, I love what you said. In fact, what's ironic and scary, and hopefully everybody listening hears this conversation we're having, because it's so, if you haven't realized yet you're making that mistake, please recognize it now. If you have yet to make that mistake, hopefully we're going to scare you off from it. The crazy part is it's easier to sell to the wrong type of customer. To your point, what you lose is the kind of customers you really want, which are the ones who say, hey, I want to work with some of the highest quality providers that are out there. And it doesn't mean we're spending, you're being crazy with your pricing, or that, we're looking for customers who just, write blank checks. That's not what we're describing. But you're right. I mean, I've seen that too, where you go to someone who you're depending on for your business's health or well-being or your goals, and their prices are too low, and you see the signs that they're cutting corners, and you're like, nope, that's not for me. That's just not for me.
Well, you end up having to do 90% of the work yourself because you can't afford to outsource it.
Yeah.
I still have a handful of those customers left, but and I've been in business for 10 years, but they're legacy customers that I do love. So, or clients that I love. So it's like, well, I'll just figure it out. But I get it because, again, you can't, everything is software as a service right now, especially for a lot of service businesses. My tech bill is like off the charts just getting in the door, not to mention, anything else, right?
Yep.
Just to manage the tech side of everything that we've got going on is just crazy.
Yeah. I love that. And that's, to your point, part of what I love. So some of my other businesses are much more dealing with enterprise size clients, big Fortune 500 companies. Those companies have a very different mindset. But for small business, part of what I love is I advise the same thing for our clients, like I'm sure you do, that I try to adhere to myself. If I try to go in and be the cheapest, then one of the corners I'm cutting is innovation. One of the corners that I'm cutting is reinvestment, right? And if I don't have profit, then I'm not a stable provider. Like, I am not a stable, healthy company that my clients can rely on. So it's the same thing I want for them that I tell them that they need to expect me to have for myself, because all those elements of health and having the ability to invest in the right team and spread the load, the workload, all those things that make for a healthy entrepreneur and a healthy company make for a good company to work with and do business with.
For sure. So let's talk a little bit about your first business. So when you were starting out, you knew as much as the rest of us, right? When it came to it. You went through some tough times. What happened?
Yeah, it's scary looking back, when you're young and you don't know any better, it's amazing what you're willing to to push through. But, I decided I wanted to be in entrepreneurship, found a family member who had a small business, decided, hey, this is my best path to see behind the curtain and kind of learn about small business. I'm going to go there for a year, and then I'm going to go out on my own and do my own thing. 20, I'm losing track now, 22 years later, I still own that business. And so that's kind of how things go. But I got into that business, and within a few months recognized that even though I didn't know anything, I knew that business was a mess. Within the first year, I got thrown into the financial end of the business, not because I had a strong background in it, but because I was willing to give it a shot. And, we needed somebody that we could trust in that part of the business. And I like to joke that, if there were 10 things that could kill a company, we were doing like 9 out of 10 of them. I mean, it was unbelievable. Like, first employee embezzled from us. We had inventory that we couldn't turn that we'd built custom for a special project. We had accounts receivable that the customers wouldn't pay, accounts payable we couldn't afford, 6 figures in credit card debt when I came on the scene. I mean, just on and on and on. And I remember, feeling like there was no other option but to push through and figure it out. Ultimately, we did, which is why that company's still around and now is, a 28-year-old company. But it really came back to a lot of what we're talking about now, which is if I can't make profit right now, like with profit and sustained profit, I can solve almost any problem, all the ones that I talked about. Without profit, I can't help anybody, right? And so we had to learn at our core how to make money and then slowly climb out of the hole that had been dug and eventually get, above and to a healthy place.
And it takes time. I mean, when you lay a groundwork of mistake after mistake after mistake, like it takes time to fix. It doesn't turn around in 30 seconds flat, right?
No, it took me the better part of a decade to climb out of the hole. It was so significant. And, and now the company's in a much healthier place, but it was a tough road.
I get it. So not all people want to learn the way we did, which is by making mistakes as we go, right? What advice do you give people who want to know how to grow their financial knowledge?
Well, the first thing, excuse me, I'm kind of coughing over here. The first thing I would say is, get a healthy mindset about the financial side of your business. You're obviously working with people who are focused on the marketing side. And similarly, there's no major part of your business that it's okay for you to be ignorant about. And, the financial part involves a lot of numbers. A lot of people are not wired for that. They don't enjoy that. I get that. Not everyone's as lucky as me that I just kind of liked numbers to begin with. And so it just kind of worked out. But you can't, hire people to run major areas of your business or entrust people to run major areas of your business that you just frankly don't understand. And it's kind of a bummer that you have to do that. But it's the eating your vegetables part of being an entrepreneur, and realistically, it's just part of being a pro is that you have to step up. So there are some books and things that I would definitely recommend that people can take on that help show you business from a different perspective. But the very first thing is just getting your mind right.
So I love books. We'll talk about the mindset in a minute, but I love books. So what are a couple that you recommend?
Well, I love Simple Numbers, which is a Greg Crabtree book. He's a CPA and it's not overly technical. But that's a good one for just really kind of, thinking about the business and business finances a little differently. But some of them are really even thinking about your personal finances, because the interesting thing is, your company is an entity. It is separate from you and it should be thought about independently of you. But a lot of the best practices that you can learn about that apply in your personal life also make sense in a company setting of just kind of, so it's almost like the more comfortable you get with money in general, the better you're going to be in your business.
You might laugh. One of my favorite tools is You Need a Budget, YNAB. I actually use it for my business to help me like allocate my funds. Because so the way I used to budget things is I used to be like, oh, I need at least this in here so I can cover upcoming expenses. Well, then my company kept growing. And then it was like, well, that at least doesn't cover what's coming up here in April or May or whatever month that happened to be. And it was like, okay, well, I sort of need to know. I'm like, ooh, my Microsoft subscription's due. Oh, this is due. Oh, my Vimeo subscription. It was just surprise after surprise after surprise. But You Need a Budget, using it for my business has really helped me. It's a personal finance tool, and I use it in my personal life too. But it's really helped me like plan for those unexpected expenses. But I agree with you. Like you need to be comfortable in your personal finances, and that'll help you become, I think, better off in your business finances. Now let's get into that mindset piece of it. Again, we'll talk about, again, pricing too low. it's a mindset. You think that you're selling something easily, but yet people are skeptical that it's too cheap, or you're not pricing it at the level that you can sustain yourself. Um, I think that there's a lot of people with different mindsets related to money. Um, whether it's, scarcity because maybe they grew up in a situation where money was scarce. There's, people who are coming from abundance, which I think is a much better position to come from, but just because you build it doesn't mean it's going to just flow right in, right? So there's some work involved there. What's the biggest mindset that you found to be important for business owners when it comes to their finances?
Yeah, I would say a couple of them. You mentioned the pricing again, which is a huge one. That's one that, I wear people out talking about it because it's so important, because it's top line revenue. Being weak on your pricing is very hard to overcome no matter what you do below that point. And the next one is, it is not acceptable. We are not for 99.999% of us are not VC backed companies, right? We this kind of somewhat nonsense we see on like a Shark Tank or some of these different places that you see this fantasized version of entrepreneurship is that it's okay to lose money. It's okay to, you've got this amount that you're just spending against, and we'll make money someday when we hit scale. And the reality is, if you don't have VC money and you don't have somebody with all that money in your account telling you, don't worry about it, you need to make money. And you don't just need to make money next quarter, next month, next year. You need to make money right now. And so getting that mindset right and thinking about your smallest, whether it's one client or one product sale, smallest unit you can possibly look at your business, you need to make sure that that's making money. And then you scale that up, and those good discipline habits on the small scale make a big scale successful business.
I think that that is very powerful. Okay. You have to be profitable. And for most of us, we're not independently wealthy. So we have to be profitable fairly quickly.
Yep.
And I think one of the things that I want to build on is, yeah, this is about progress, not perfection. So being um, profitable, scaling up something that is already profitable, that's when you can go all in on that. We talk a lot on this show about progress, not perfection, moving forward, things like that. There was a guy, I went to a presentation where he was opening up, I think it was like a rock climbing gym or something. And he gave himself 30 days to get it done and open. All of his competitors were like 60, 90 days before they opened. He's like, nope, I'm going to be open in under 30 days. And I'm selling memberships immediately to start the next month. Because he knew one of the biggest issues was going to be not launching quickly and having a ton of money going out the door for staff, for construction, for building rent, things like that, with no money coming in for months. And he's like, I don't know how that's acceptable in similar businesses like mine. And the one thing he knew, and he was a serial entrepreneur too, was doors open. We don't care what it needs, what we need to do, but we need to get it open because we are not bleeding money out for 1690 plus days.
Yep. And what's amazing about that is I guarantee when he opened his doors, it wasn't perfect. When he opened his doors, it forced him to focus on what would make a good enough experience to justify the memberships and get the customers, safe, obviously, in that environment and taken care of. And everything else took a backseat. And you know what? 6 months in or a year in, when all those other little things had been resolved, nobody who walked through the door ever knew that part of the story or cared.
Yep.
And the customers who were there, who were able to use his services and got there and saw like, oh, this is a real person. And, yeah, there's some junk over there in the corner. They're still trying to iron out. Who cares? No one really holds that against you. It is amazing that we kind of hold this like wait until everything's perfect and then we'll get started. And that's not how success actually works.
No, Walt Disney World, I remember the stories are it's all made possible by Walt's brother, Roy.
Yep.
Roy is the one who managed the finances because Walt filed bankruptcy like 7 times. And until Roy came in and like was running the shop, there wouldn't be a Disney anymore, right? Because Walt was the idea guy. And I do love how I can't remember if it's Roy or Walt always said, put the money in the show, right? Like
Yeah.
they don't even paint the backsides of buildings unless it's necessary and can be seen from the front. But it's that kind of mentality that will help you be profitable and help you grow.
Absolutely.
So this is fantastic. So let me ask you to share just a little bit about FinElevate so that our listeners and those watching on YouTube understand what it is that you offer. Because again, I do feel that financial knowledge is something that we're missing. If you have a corporate background, you're really missing it because you have no idea how to price or do much of anything outside of the corporate model. And I know that because that's where I came from. But tell us a little bit about FinElevate and how that would help customers or help how you help small businesses do better with their finances.
Absolutely. Yeah. FinElevate in the simplest terms, I describe this as a fractional CFO service for entrepreneurs. So what I mean by that is that we're actually in the business helping entrepreneurs and their teams solve financial problems. We do some amount of overseeing kind of what's happening on the accounting side of the business, because obviously we don't want to be limited. We want to be kind of that glue in the middle of that entrepreneur's business finances. And so, that comes down to really helping them achieve their goals. And for the vast majority of small businesses, they're looking for more profit. They're looking for more clarity and to iron out their cash flow. And ultimately, the business owner is looking for more freedom. And if you don't have financial stability, you can never gain that freedom that you so desire. And so how do we achieve that? Number one, obviously the clarity piece, but we work directly with the team. So this was not part of the service. You know how when you create a company and all of a sudden you discover there are elements that you never even realized would be really beneficial. They'd be a core part of what people value. Well, that for us is that because we're working directly with the team, we're upping the professionalism of the team. Now delegating elements of the finances becomes much more possible for the entrepreneur in ways that they never expected. And I know from owning multiple other businesses that if the owner of the business goes to the team and says, here's what you need to do to make more money for the company, the fear is always that the team here's how to make me richer, right? But if we come in and say, hey, this is what a professional sales lead does to ensure the profitability of the company and to maintain cash flow of the company, or here's what the ops team needs to do to make for a better, more successful company, they hear that very differently. It's helping them grow their career and up their skills. And so entrepreneurs just absolutely love when we engage in that way. And so in general, that's really, in a nutshell, kind of what we do. It's all very data backed dashboards, really getting into the weeds of your business and understanding what makes it tick.
I love that. Thank you so much for spending so much time with me. Before I let you go, though, I do have to ask you the question that I ask all my guests. This show is called Imperfect Marketing because marketing is anything but a perfect science. And yes, pricing is part of marketing and it's a little bit more science than the rest of it. But what has been your biggest marketing lesson learned throughout all of your different companies?
I would say the biggest one is that you can get lost in marketing because there are so many different options. So it's really about understanding the nature of your business and the nature of, what type of marketing strategy makes sense for you, and then learning to tune out the noise. Because I know that from my own experience can be a real struggle. I mean, there's 1,000 little things you could be trying and testing and theoretically could work and worked for someone, but it really is about kind of honing that focus and getting really lasered in on what's ultimately going to work for you.
I love that. Yes. Do not go to networking meetings, have someone tell you that they're having success with something, and then go do that and add that on to your never ending pile of marketing. Yes, you want to stay top of mind. Yes, you want to be visible, but you don't want to spread yourself too thin because then you can't keep up. And I think that that's the biggest issue most people, including me, face on a regular basis is just really trying to keep up. So, thank you again so much for all of your time. Again, pricing is part of marketing. Pricing is part of your brand. Pricing is part of what your brand says to other people. So do me a favor and really think through your pricing. Make sure that you're profitable and a sustainable business. If you've learned anything today, I would appreciate it if you would rate and subscribe wherever you are. Thank you so much and have a great rest of your day.